We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Friday version of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, and you are now listening to the Friday FARcast. And today I will be joined by Christine Maynard, who is a writer from Louisiana, and she is also somebody who is experiencing a debilitating mystery disease that has been undiagnosable to her doctors. And one of the things that really struck me about Christine's challenge with this disease is how stoic she has been. I've been reading her Facebook posts and very detailed descriptions of what she's going through from a medical level, at least from her own experience with whatever's being interpreted by the doctors. So her writing is actually coming through as she dialogues what's happening with her body. So we're going to have her on. We're going to talk about what it's like to go through that and how frustrating it may be to experience something that they really don't have any answers to. And it really, puts us into a much larger discussion and context as to what we as a species will be going through over the course of the next decade, because GMOs, unless they are stopped at some point, are not going to go away, and they're only going to get, see, the thing with GMOs is that people think that if they have one GMO kind of formula, they're just going to stick with it. That's not really the case, because what they're finding with GMOs is, say, for instance, the corn that has been genetically modified for years, well, there have been pests and parasites that are immune to the genetically modified corn now, which is why they created the genetically modified corn in the first place. And not only are they immune, but they're becoming like super pests. So that means that they have to actually change the formula inside the genetically modified vegetable or fruit so that they can play God and throw the insect or the parasite or the fungi or whatever it is off track and have them take the next step in that genetic relay race, and then mutate, and then, of course, become immune to whatever changes or iterations have been made to the genetically modified fruit or vegetable. It's really a very dangerous bait and switch game, and it's only going to get worse for us in our bodies. Not to mention that we have the influence of poor exit in the Gulf and the Caribbean. We also have the super diseases and the super viruses that are being cooked up all the time in places like Plum Island and elsewhere in this country. We're also dealing with Fukushima. We're dealing with chemtrails, and who knows what the hell else is in chemtrails besides what's listed by people by by Clifford Carnicom. So these things are not going to go away, and more and more of us are going to fall prey to these strange, mysterious conditions. Some of you listening right now may be experiencing them on your own. We all are suffering at some level with our bodies, and if you're not, well, God bless you. You've got the gene combination to get you through the ziggurat of health at the end times here. Either that, or you've managed to really take incredible care of yourself. So we're going to bring Christine on in just a moment. Looks like she's called in, and we're going to get into it. And the second part of our show is a recorded interview I did with the infamous Les Visible yesterday. You're going to love it. He's all over the place. He's talking about his book, The Curious Tale of Ash and the Whine, which is available on his websites. It is a 30-plus chapters. It's a big work, and it's a spiritual kick-ass novel, and it's told through the eyes and ears and whatever is the heart of Ash, his lead character, who's come to chew bubblegum and kick some ass and take some names and all that stuff. Excuse me. So I'll play that shortly after my time with Christine. Okay, so I've got two callers on here, and I'm not sure which one is Christine, but before I go into the call queue, I just want to read this quote by Epictetus. And Epictetus was the inspiration for Marcus Aurelius. And Epictetus is one of the great philosophers of all time. And he lived with excruciating pain and very debilitating conditions. The whole school of Stoicism comes out of Epictetus. And there are some great quotes by Epictetus that you can find online. And here's one that I think is really pertinent to at least the first part of today's show. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's some ancient wisdom that is incredibly timely and probably pretty timely for today's guest. So let's go in here. Let's see if this is Christine. Hello there.
Hi, Robert. It is Christine, and that was beautiful. You've given me the title to the treatise, which is truly a dialogue with one's body.
Well, we're glad to have you, Christine, and we're ready to start this dialogue with you about your body and what you're going through. First of all, why don't you give folks a little bit of background as to who you are and what you do, and then let's get into what you're going through and see if we can untie a few knots there.
Well, that sounds great. So I'll take it from here. I'm Christine Maynard. I'm Christine from Louisiana. I've lived in many parts of the world. I have been extraordinarily healthy. I was a nationally ranked triathlete. I have 3 beautiful grown sons. I've had a magnificent, juicy life. And a few things happened, including a car wreck, but that overlaid the mystery illness. So for the past 12 years, I've been in and out of 7 major medical research institutions and dealing with at least 60 specialists, and I've learned the ropes. The purpose of my dialoguing with my body on blogs and Facebook and with you and today is in order to share and hopefully help other people have heart and hope and a little bit of wisdom in how to deal with doctors.
Okay.
And
yeah. Keep going.
That's what. Sorry? Okay. So I was really, really well and healthy and taught yoga for over 30 years. And I had lived on the east end of Molokai in 1981 after being a commodities broker. And the prime was 21 and a half. And that's the first time I got sick. And my husband had an illness that was really rare, and I had something that was never diagnosed that caused the same hives I'm still having today. So I think I have an underlying morphing bacteria, that the tests that we use, that are the same that our grandparents were tested, complete CBCs and just basic blood work, either you have an infection or you don't, I don't think they can pick up on many, many morphing, changing bacterial infections, spirochetes, things that plague people and things that cause bizarre symptoms. So the first illness was in Hawaii. Then I was well through most of my childbearing years. Then there was an MVA, a car wreck, where I was thrown from a car at 82 miles an hour through the mashed metal roof. It rolled 8 times. It rolled over me. And I lived. I coded a few times. I was left open for 11 days. And the punchline is that they would bring my boys in every day to tell me goodbye, and there's no reason my heart would beat. They finally sewed me up. I lived. But they never reconnected my liver, which was in pieces, to my duodenum. So I stayed alive for, that was in 2000, for now 13 years. And for 10 of those years, my liver would have little volcanoes called biomas and burst into my body, causing sepsis, sometimes paralysis, spontaneous bruising, hives, weird things that no one knew because no one would believe, it wasn't in surgical notes, that my liver was not connected. So finally, when I'd run out of all resources and couldn't work and had disability, I went to Ochsner, and they opened me up. They found that my liver was disconnected. They did their best after all the scar tissue at that time from the myriad times that my biomas had burst open, pouring waste into my body, leaving scars on all my organs, even crossing the blood-brain barrier, and they did their best to fix it. But they also discovered that it wasn't in surgical notes. You know, I'd like to say one more thing about that. The way I pushed so hard and the way I've had hope and continued instead of being relegated to pain management or just going away, which is what most doctors wanted to do because they couldn't figure out what I had, was that one of my broken legs never worked properly after the car wreck. I had one rotted, one plated leg, and I called it my Lourdes petitioner walk, and I would wear baseball caps. So if I fell forward, I would catch the brim, the bill of the hat, and I was okay. I mean, I was recovering. But I couldn't do certain yoga poses, and I would show doctors. On one side I could, on one side I couldn't. I couldn't sleep on one side. And they said, well, you've been in a terrible accident and it's okay. And I said, no, I'm deformed here. And I made them open it up. And they found out that they left the muscle, the IT band, unsewn, and the muscle beneath that had herniated through. And they just closed me up on my leg and not put it in surgical notes. So they repaired all the scar tissue and popped the muscles back in and sewed me up and took the plate out. And then I thought, if that happened to my leg, I'll bet that happened to my liver.
Right.
So I guess the point of that story is you can't simply trust your medical records. You have to be your own detective, approach it like a board game, and approach it like a Buddhist and say, whatever, if it's a good day or a bad day or terrible things or wonderful things, you just say, isn't that interesting? And you keep progressing. And so really, I don't mind.
Well, it's fascinating to see you go through this and have such an amazing attitude. At some point, either through yourself or through loved ones that care about you, there would seem to be some malice towards the medical doctors who have done such a slipshod job of taking care of you. How do you deal with those kinds of feelings, and what's your general overall feeling for the medical profession today?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
I think I do read other people who care about me and feel protective about me making sweeping generalizations about doctors. And I have had some really excellent doctors, and I had some awful doctors. I've had doctors who say, if you show up in my hospital, I'll just put 2 gastric tubes in your nose and blow you out like a car radiator. I've been told that my only problem was I had a GLU4 fat marker, and one of my relatives wouldn't have been able to walk through the door, and if I didn't box and juice, I'd weigh 100 pounds more. I've had doctors send doctors in to ask what my line of work was and just smirk and walk out and write hypochondriasis because they didn't believe I worked as a liaison with fashion houses in Europe and Asia. I've had Munchausen written as a differential at Mayo from the doctor I thought cared the most, but I made the mortal sin. There's some sins in dealing with doctors. You can't use medical terms. Other doctors will coach you. Don't use medical terms. Don't ever say that you've taken pain meds. And don't discuss multiple symptoms. So all that's just crazy. I mean, I think we have to think that doctors are thinking about their golf game, their sex life, whatever, just like humans. They're humans. They have a 20-minute span. They're under pressure. They have their own subset of problems and issues. And you go in, you've got one shot with a new doctor, and I think 80% of them really try if you give them their head to think about it, especially infectious disease doctors. They rock. But if the tests they run and their first thought is wrong and proves false, they lose interest and you're gone. And they just want you to go away or say it's all in your head.
Right.
So I wouldn't be alive if doctors hadn't repaired me and fixed my bones and my organs on numerous occasions.
Right.
Right now I'm facing a problem, though, involving the hubris of a rock star surgeon with a 170-page CV. And he repaired my liver tumors a year and a half ago, and the liver tumors have returned. They're not cancerous. The infectious disease doctor is very excited because we just need to aspirate them, and he could find out what the bacteria is. But the liver doctor doesn't want that to happen because he said they would never come back because he was such a great surgeon. So there are a lot of politics. I just hope people listening and calling in with questions can think about these things. It's not Marcus Welby, MD. You go in, you try to speak slowly, you research on the internet, you write down how you feel, you chart your dream quality, your diet, your state of mind, how you feel emotionally, psychospiritually. Now, they may not want to see that, and if you pull it out at first, they may say they don't have time or you're scaring them, but you have to know everything you can gather for information for yourself to chart what's going on to have any real chance of figuring out the causative agents.
Right.
So I don't hold it totally against doctors. I thank all the doctors who have been really nice. I thank my alternative medicine doctors, Dr. John Dollar and Dr. Brian Neal and Dr. Will in Austin, who some of them were at OMA and Austin Oriental Medicine Academy. I've had lots of alternative doctors who are great, lots of healers who have been wonderful, and the Western medical field is an uphill battle, and change needs to be effected with medical school students because they're taught in their first semester, if you see hooves, it's a horse, not a zebra. Therefore, they tend to discount anybody with anything weird. And if it's not what they first guess it is, you're out of luck.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I can see that the training for allopathic medicine is really a boot camp for the heart, compassion, and mind of the doctor. And the medical industry takes over both. And I think they only return one of those, and it's usually very different than what it was when they took it. So you have the hives, you have the recurring tumors now. Is there anything else that you're suffering or going through?
Oh, my God, yes. The main thing that I think people can hear today and begin to think differently about would be, after the car wreck I recovered, but then a year and a half later, with everyone thinking I was totally well, I'd done a triathlon again, I was still single-handedly raising 3 teenage boys and working 3 international jobs. And I started to swell. And in less than 3 weeks, I went from 113 to 150 and had to wear my friend's pregnancy pants and was going to doctors and saying, I'm swelling. And that will never fly. Any woman from their late 30s, 40s, early 50s saying they're swelling or they're fat, they're not going to take you seriously. They're just going to write perimenopausal obese woman and not look into it. But that was the first thing, and it was very bizarre, and there was nothing I could do. My diet has always been impeccable. My genetics are for ectomesomorphic person. I examined everything I could, my spiritual alignment, what was I holding on to? I'm a fire person. Why was all this water drenching my fire energy? I mean, I thought about it every day and every night for 12 years. And sometimes it just goes away completely. Mm-hmm. Now, that's been diagnosed as idiopathic cyclic edema by a revered endocrinologist at Tulane, who is the editor of 7 medical journals and assistant editor for JAMA, blah, blah, blah. But there's no real treatment for it, and it's called an underdiagnosed disease. And also, Robert, why is the body doing that? The body has great wisdom. The body must be gushing all of that fluid to swell one up because it thinks it's a good thing. And I think there's an underlying infection that grows around, and that the fluid is doing like what fluid does if you have a thorn in your finger.
Right.
But there are many, 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 many people, and I can look at someone and see, and these people can go, they get swell up until they're in congestive heart failure. And but there's a difference because fluid is very hard, and it's hot, and it just changes so much. So I get fluid. I get spontaneous bruising. I get blisters that come out on the end of my fingers. I have scarring on all of my organs. I have tumors from my cervix and my lower abdomen on all my organs, calcified masses in my lungs, and white punctate matter in my brain. And the humorous thing is, if you look at an MRI, I light up like a Christmas tree, like little half marbles, all the way up. But every specialist has a different name for it. Like the OBGYNs will say, oh, they're Bartholomew, they're Bartholomew cysts, they mean nothing. Oh, they're granulomatous scarring. Oh, that's attrition and aging in your brain. But they're all the same thing.
Right.
Right. So the symptoms, I lose the ability to walk sometimes. I have, it feels like my kneecaps are being blown off, my sacrum and knees and shoulders feel like a metal building someone's just clanging on. I'll be down for 60 days. I can't take pain meds at all of any shape. They make me ill. And so I lay down a lot and, just try to relax. Mm-hmm. I will walk down on a walker to the river behind my home. I'll chant. I'll sing. I'll laugh. I'll have drinks. I'll have visitors.
Yeah.
But I never quit looking for what could correlate with the symptoms because I really want to help other people not give up or not think it's their fault or that they they ate too much or something. I want people to be empowered and to find a way. I know I'll be well. And through my wellness, I am happy to suffer because I know I can help other people.
Mm-hmm. It's an amazing attitude, and one of the things that strikes me about that is, we've been going through these strange diseases really since I would say the 80s was when they really started to, come on the scene. People would have, chronic fatigue syndrome. What's that? Nobody's ever heard of that before. You have people that are just completely exhausted. Getting from one side of the room to the other was really a laborious act for them. And people that didn't have it would say, "Oh, why don't you just have a cup of coffee?" And have a Pepsi or something. And it started with that. And then, there's a number of other, lupus came out of that eventually, and Lyme disease. And at every stage, there would be people that would be, they wouldn't be doctors, they may be friends, quote unquote friends or family or whatever, and they would say, just get over it. It's all in your head. I don't understand why you're going through this. Haven't you been to the doctors? What do they say? Well, if they can't figure anything out, it must be you, right? I mean, this is one.
That's what I hear, and that's people are well intentioned. Most of them probably when they say that, but for the person suffering, you're trying valiantly to be well and re-embrace life, and life slips away a little bit like a sand in an hourglass. It goes like, first of all, you get too weak to shave both of your legs on the same day. Then, money goes. You can't work. There are little things. You give up being able to go get your face waxed if you're a woman, and that's what you did once a month. You give up things because you can't do them financially. You don't have the energy. You don't have the resources. You give up things, and they're taken away. But you and I know there are huge blessings in that, and a cosmic joke in that. So I'm all okay with it. I'm okay with that. I am wealthy beyond measure and really happy. And today's a pretty good day. But I know there's an answer. And actually, is Les coming on today on your show?
Yeah, we pre-recorded the interview yesterday, so he'll be on after you and I sign off here.
Well, I want to throw something out that when I was reading Less Visible yesterday, who is such an amazing person, and I want to read everything he's ever written, I had an epiphany about my illness. And maybe the fact that I have epiphanies about my illness gives me hope and bumps me along. But the epiphany I had from reading Les was when he wrote about being a shiatsu practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on hundreds and maybe 1,000 people. When the boys were little, I would do up to 8 shiatsus a day for sometimes an hour and a half each.
Mm-hmm.
And I was incredibly well. I would run 5 miles in the morning before I woke them up for school, work on lots of people, be a soccer mother, take care of those babies.
Mm-hmm.
I was so well. I was I was bursting with wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the year 97, before the car wreck, when the hives came back and weird swelling, and like you talked about the 80s, strange diseases, that one thing that happened was I'd remarried, and I had 2 stepdaughters in addition to my 3 boys, and lots of other responsibilities, and I quit working on other people. So yesterday, I was just wondering if you have God force coming through you, and you are a willing agent and a big conduit with a wide aperture, and you're working on people, and then you stop using that specific gift of laying hands on, maybe it blocks you up.
Yes, that is a possibility. I mean, obviously would have to, kind of run that around my own head, but I think the whole process of gaining epiphany into one's condition is essential, and however you get there is a good thing. Do you want to talk to somebody?
Everybody, anybody, yes.
All right, somebody's calling in. Let's see if they're just listening or they want to ask you a question, Christine.
Sure, that'd be great.
Hello? Hello there.
Hi, are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you.
Hi, darling.
Oh, it's Barbara. I'm listening. I'm having computer problems, and I can't hear the talk radio, so I'm listening on the phone. I was going to call in with some questions later on.
Well, you should probably ask them now because we only have about 10 minutes left, 10, 15 minutes. Okay,
well, Christine, I'm Jack Joe that we made friends last night.
Yes, darling.
Yeah, and I've been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, and I actually missed the whole first part of your symptoms. But there are a lot of doctors who are not in the mainstream who go out, think out of the box. and I'd like to have a private conversation with you on Facebook because it's a lot of information, and I need to know where you live, and I need to know what your resources are and what those symptoms are, and I may be able to direct you to someone who thinks out of the box.
Thank you. And I'm sorry you've had to go through all of that, but as you know, it's a learning, growing process, and I look forward to comparing notes, and thank you for offering to help, and definitely we'll do that on Facebook.
I've been through the exact same path. I've had friends in the exact same path. I've gone through, oh, you're just depressed. Oh, you're just this. It's horrible. It's that piece of it is horrible, so I feel for you. But I do have resources to share, okay?
Well, tell us, darling, are you feeling better?
No. I'm feeling a little better because I'm feeling a little better because I'm actually doing something that I will share with you that Robert actually turned me on to is this gentleman, Tom Palladino, who's doing the scalar energy thing for me. So I have a lot of viruses and infections in my body, and he's able to knock them out. And that has given me a little more energy. But I still have like about at least 3 days in bed, can't move, can't do a week. So,
can I ask you a question? Do you have Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus?
Yes, I have both of those viruses. I also have HHV6. I have Mycoplasma pneumoniae. I could run off a list of things, and I have the lab reports to show that. And I was very lucky to find a research immunologist who is a genius when I first got sick. And if it weren't for him legitimating the illness and getting me going on the right protocol, I would really be in bad shape. Unfortunately,
well, let's help all the people
away.
out there who are suffering, and as we get better ourselves. And yes, I look forward to meeting, hopefully, and speaking to and being treated by this genius immunologist.
Well, he's no longer living, so I've got to find a new genius. So I'm searching for that. But there are a lot of doctors who continue to do research, who will do a consult for you through Skype. There's just too much for me to say in the phone call. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I can gather up my resources and put you in several different directions. I mean, the first thing you need to do is get a diagnosis and find out what the heck's going on with your body.
I've had 10 or 15 of them, but they're not really sticking. I mean, I do think that idiopathic cyclic edema is true, but then again, idiopathic means unknown. So what kind of diagnosis is that? Well, maybe Robert would be so kind as to have us both on in the future after we've compared notes and come to some conclusions.
Okay, that sounds good.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to put you back on hold, okay? And you can connect.
Okay, I'm listening up. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, darling. Thank you.
So one of the things that we just touched on briefly, is that when people, even if they are well-meaning, accuse somebody who is ill or sick or has a condition that it's all in their head, just do something else. If the doctors can't find anything, you must not be sick. One of the things that they do, unfortunately, is they turn the person who is actually in suffering into a victim. It's kind of like, well, you asked for that rape. So you got what you deserved. It's a similar mentality, and one of the things that people could really kind of wrap their heads around with this stuff is to have some kind of compassion, for what somebody's going through. And
absolutely. And that belief system, when it's the harsh belief system, the harsh punitive belief system that's more masculine and aggressive, instead of it is very strong. And if you're not a strong enough person and you take that into on a cellular level, then you're toast. You feel bad about yourself. The tapes that you repeat in your head are, I've just done this, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I should be out exercising in the heat. But you can't. You physically can't. So being kind, finding moderation in all things and humor, paying attention to your dreams for clues of what's going on and what your body needs, and feeding yourself, well, and just trusting, putting your intellect and your will and your body and everything right into your soul, and allowing your soul's wisdom to take care of your life.
Let's talk about health care. What is the state of your health care, and how are you dealing with this, and how are you going to deal with this when Obamacare kicks into gear? Because I think there's going to be very different protocols.
I love that question. When I had the car wreck, I was affluent, and as soon as the car wreck happened, they placed a filter beneath my heart, which, from actuary tables, makes me uninsurable. I suddenly became uninsurable. So I had $600,000 worth of bills paid by the auto insurance, but I could not seek treatment for any type of rehab unless it was straight out of my pocket. I think the uninsurance pool in my state premium would have been $2,500 a month. So for 6 years, I didn't go to doctors because I wanted to save my money for my son's education and life, and I had a few $100,000, and I wanted to hold on to it. I had 106 fever one time, and I was very ill, and I just stayed home because I didn't have insurance. The best medical treatment I've gotten in my life has been, well, in England. I love socialized medicine, but was in Mexico. I was a boxing journalist, and I had a fistula from the fluid actually find its way out of my body, and I was put in hospital, and the radiologist, who was a PhD, the director of the hospital, the room, the care, and the meds were $95 U.S. and wonderful care. I spent my money going to doctors. I remarried a man with an agreement that I would buy him a truck and take care of him financially, and I would get group insurance through marrying him so I could go to Mayo. I mean, I was really trying to figure out how. Mayo wasn't able to fix me. I ran out of money. About the same time, 3 years after I'd applied for disability, 3 years after I had to quit working, when I would on and off lose my ability to walk, and just was in so much pain. And 3 years, right around the time when the money ran out, my disability card came, and I just took that card and went to a new hospital with fresh eyes, and I would look at doctors online on the internet at their faces in each division of specialty that I needed, and I would try to intuit who I should see just by if I felt that I would have a chance at speaking to them for them to care enough to try.
Right.
And they opened me up. They're the first ones who found that my liver had been left disconnected, and so I'm on Medicare, and I really love it, and I look forward to being well and making big monies, but right now I probably have $250 a month cash to buy groceries or meds or dog food or, a meal out, and it pays for my rent, $550 a month, and my utilities and my internet, and it pays for my doctor's visits. I have $30 deductibles per specialist and $100 deductibles or copays for procedures. But to me, it's a great deal. Obamacare, if I didn't have disability, I don't know what I have no idea what I would do. And less doctors are accepting Medicare. So there are some places I've called to see where they don't accept Medicare.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's going to be on the increase.
What's your astrological sign? What are you?
I'm a Taurus with a Scorpio ascendant, and my moon is in Aquarius, which you were just writing about.
Yeah, you definitely have a very lunar Aquarian vibe. Let's take one more call. We need to make this quick because I want to play the stream with Viz in its entirety so everybody can hear it in real time. So let's take one more call, make it a quick call, and then we'll say goodbye and transition, and we'll move into the Q&A with Visible. Here we go. I think this is the gardener. Hello?
This is Hi, Robert. This is the gardener, and I did a friend request on Christine on Facebook, so I can tell her in more detail or ask her some questions. I'm glad you brought up the astrology and seeing if there's a cycle to the start of her medical problems and the car wreck itself and its conclusionary cycle time. But Christine, have you ever done a Casey's castor oil abdominal pack?
I did on Maui last summer, and it relieved all my symptoms.
It really what?
It relieved all my symptoms.
That's the first thing I picked up with listening to you at the beginning. I would do that. I would even just anoint my body, your liver area with it, and go sit in the sun.
Thank you so much.
I swear, and Epsom salts. I swear, these simple things. I thought, I've been through the medical thing. I've been through the legal thing. I will never, I don't care what happens to me, utilize either of those industries again. And I did have a heart healing in my sleep last October when I was sure I was going to die. And it's like I will never utilize that industry, and I was healed. So
I'm so happy for you.
I will get together with you on Facebook. I will light a candle for you. My son was in a car wreck yesterday. Those have such huge chakra shocks besides the physical shocks getting in car wrecks. And so I felt vital to speak with you, but I did put out a friend request for you. But please try. Casey said that castor oil was the Palm of Christi, a gift from Christ to heal, and I have used it with some pretty miraculous results.
Conditions. Hey, listen,
thank
Gardner,
you. I will Facebook you and thank you.
Yeah, you could connect with Christine on Facebook.
Thanks.
Yeah, we got to transition to get to Viz. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Albert.
Okay, hey, Christine.
I appreciate it. Yes.
Hey,
yes.
thank you for calling and being a part of this and sharing your life and your condition. You can find Christine on Facebook. And What Women Weave is your website. Is that right?
Correct. And thank you so much for having me, Robert, and for the work you do.
And that link is on the show page as well. So if you want to compare notes with Christine and stay in touch with her, you can do that. And let's get you back on again sometime, and we'll check in with you, okay?
I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful one. Tell Les hello.
All right, I will. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay, that's Christine Maynard, who is going through an epic TEDx struggle with mystery, symptoms, and disease. So speaking of mystery, the man is no mystery to people who listen to him, or read him, but might be a mystery to others. I spent about an hour and 10 minutes with Les Visible yesterday, and we riffed on a lot of different things, including his new book and sort of the state of the world and spiritual technologies and all kinds of out there goodness. So let me click this, and we'll get this going, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time left over. If not, I will see you guys on Monday, and let's pray for peace in the Middle East. Here's me and Viz from yesterday. So here he is, back by popular demand, one of the world's most prolific bloggers and most beloved, reality safecrackers. It's my good friend, Les Visible, all the way across the Atlantic. How are you, my friend?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So there's a lot to talk about, a lot to cover today, and thanks for taking time out to hang out here again. People have really enjoyed our chats before. So let's get into the high level stuff. We want to talk about your book, obviously your ebook, which I've just downloaded and getting ready to jump into over the weekend. It's called The Curious Tale of Ash and the Whine. I've scoped some chapters, and it's classic Visible in long form, so people have a lot to look forward to with that. But let's get into the headlines here. Let's jump right into Syria. And I want your take on this from a geopolitical perspective, but also from kind of the quantum perspective, and how this might even tie into your book. Let's get into that.
Okay. Syria, a little difficult for me to be comprehensive about this simply because there's so much that I don't know. What I do know is what a great many people also know, which is that Israel wants Syria. And, of course, most of us are aware that Rupert Murdoch and the Rothschilds are owners, along with Dick Cheney, of Genie Oil, and that they're trying to, suck everything out of the Golden Heights, and mainly they want real estate. And Israel and the worldwide satanic organization that operates under a variety of umbrella names, they're both the same thing. And they're both hooked up with each other, and their intention is to destroy civilization. And one of the ways they do that, besides cultural destruction, which they're doing by pushing the politicization of the gay agenda and any variety of other things that are designed to destroy the family unit and destroy people's faith in themselves, they are also setting about destroying the economic spectrum. And one of the ways they do that is through war. Now, the converse argument is that one will say, well, doesn't that actually help the economy, especially if you're an imperialist operation? Not if it cuts off the oil, it doesn't. Yeah, a handful of international energy titans, they'll make a lot of money. But the people who rely on these things for the transfer of their goods, to getting to their work, and any number of things, traveling, whether by bus or plane or boat, and all of these things get astronomical, and so all kinds of things are set up as a deterrent to people having faith in themselves is thrown into doubt and confusion, and then they're much more easily manipulated. And war also creates fear and terror. It also then unleashes the security apparatuses, which are given the imprimatur to crack down on anyone they want to crack down on, and certainly the general public in a comprehensive and overall sense.
Yeah, the one piece that I talked about yesterday on my show was the whole oil piece, and people don't really quite understand this, is that if there is a green light in Syria, and with every passing day it certainly looks like that's about to happen, immediately what we'll see is a spike in everything related to oil and gas, and that will raise oil prices here and gas prices here in the States and have the domino effect in terms of goods and getting those goods to the marketplace. People don't really quite understand this. I mean, I think they do on some level here in the populace. I think the populace in the United States, I can speak for them. People are tired, Viz. They're tired of war. They're tired of all this. And the majority of the folks here have rallied around a very clear and audible no. But, of course, the people that supposedly count, they aren't listening. They're turning a deaf ear to what the American people want. So this is going to have a very interesting domino effect on the American people themselves, and to see where this goes. And I think in some ways this is part of the game theory, that they're more than willing to look at how this impacts the American people and are ready for some kind of unique response towards that end.
Well, there are various things going on in that area too that are indicative of things that some of us are paying attention to. One of them is at the House meeting yesterday that I watched with John the Liar Kerry. A preponderance of the House representatives who were speaking were going, look, I'm hearing from hundreds and hundreds of my constituents, and they don't want this war, they don't like it, they think it's BS, And then most recently now, we learned today in the Washington Post, or whether it was yesterday's article, that, none of the politicians wanted to meet with Putin, and there was an argument about it. And this overwhelming response from the public, calling Obama a liar, saying it was all BS, the Russians are the only ones that have it right, that Putin knows what he's talking about. I was amazed at how informed all of these people were and how they were even allowed to come through and be able to say what they said.
Yeah, well, that's certainly a first. Speaking of Kerry, I have this theory that he's been replaced. Whoever that guy is, that's not John Kerry. That's either a clone, a stand-in, a reptilian. Who knows who that guy is or what that guy is, but I'm telling you right now, that's not John Kerry. Not that the original John Kerry was anything to brag about, but, this is a way that they can get these soulless beings to do whatever they want, right?
Yeah, well, you brought up something I hadn't even considered that aspect. All I know is that, and I put a picture up in Origami yesterday, where, I had this photo of Carrie, and it was one of the most satanic things I'd ever seen. And it really did look like some possessed entity. And I put it in there because it struck me so strong. I wanted to see have the readers see it. And you're bringing that up now. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, a lot of the time I have certain tunnel vision in how I go, and I don't consider all the possibilities.
Well, the other thing is his wife Teresa. She has been, MIA. I mean, people had not seen her for at least 3 to 4 months, and supposedly she had been in some kind of major physical crisis, which was
had a seizure.
Right. Nobody saw her for a long time. Then all of a sudden she comes out for the hearings yesterday, looking every bit as zombified as Carrie himself. Very strange stuff.
I saw that, and she also looked depraved and demented too. Before I knew who it was, I went, "Who is that? Man, that person looks like years and decades of depravity there." It was written on the face. And then when, someone or other mentioned who it was, I went, "Whoa." But maybe you're right. Maybe, she's been replaced too. See, I'm not really versed in that particular area of things. I don't know how they go about or do this thing about clones, reptiles, all the rest of it. I know there's some truth to all of it, but what the specific and applicable truth is, this I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it all seems Twilight Zone-ish in terms of, and I'm not the only one. There are other people that are noticing it. It's becoming more and more noticeable, and I'm not sure whether that's the impact of people waking up and really questioning this notion of reality, or the clones are just getting worse. I mean, who knows? I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely startling to sit back and witness and watch. And I think also people are completely, they're over the lies. They're over. I think, it's kind of like people have reached that saturation point.
Saturation point, exactly.
They just can't take it anymore. And this is going to be a very interesting time and pushback. So you and I were talking yesterday. You said it was going to go down by today. I thought today or tomorrow because of the new moon in Virgo. But we're also staring down the anniversary of 9/11 in just 6 days, which also happens to be the birthday of Bashir al-Assad.
Well, what I had actually written last week, and I got this on an intuitive level, and so I don't know how much credence to put in it, except that it's generally accurate, was that it would take place between September 1st and September 15th.
Mm-hmm.
With one caveat, where if they had to readjust everything, and then they were being caught in a bind as far as credibility and other things went, they would push it into October, which for them is very classic. But also coming up are the satanic Judaic holidays, where they generally like to spill blood, and they like to, put the offerings on the altar of Baal and these various demons that they worship over there. And, during this period of time with Hebrew holidays, that tends to get their blood up, and they love spilling it. And that goes into, you say Bashir Assad's holiday is also, birthday is also.
Yep, 9/11. So before you and I hit record on this interview, you had shared with me that you'd been up all night and were being harassed. You were being harassed by unmarked black vehicles and all kinds of stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Well, it's really odd, and I can only speak to a little part of it. I was actually a witness to, but I know I was told by Suzanne. The thing she doesn't do is lie or exaggerate. And last night, I think I might have fallen asleep a bit early. But then I woke up because I heard the dogs going crazy. Now, Suzanne, I know, was up later than I, and I didn't say anything to her about this morning, but I remember the dogs going off all through the early morning hours. So then some other things happened. Oh, yeah, I had another event that was very strange, too, and that pushed it all out of my mind. But later on, toward noon or so, I said to her, "What was going on there last night with the dogs? I mean, they were going crazy." And she says, "Oh, yeah." She says, well, I took the dogs out for a walk around 2 o'clock. And when I came back, there was this big black SUV parked outside the house with antennas bristling all over it. And I didn't see who was in there. It was kind of blacked out. And then I came inside. And then sometime later, the dogs went off again. I got to look, and I saw a vehicle driving back and forth in front of the house with headlights on. And then it stopped. And then an hour or so again, the dogs went off again, and the vehicle had come and pulled into the driveway. Now, I was awake at this point because it was becoming obvious to me something weird was going on. And then what happened? Oh, right. Then I heard someone messing with the door. I didn't go down to see who it was because I figured they'd find me if it was something like that. And but it was just it was that kind of meddling with that seems designed to get your attention but isn't going any further. And my immediate impression after all of it, the next day, was that it was a typical psyops sort of a situation in order to get me to be paranoid, to be uncomfortable. That doesn't really work with me, though. This is what they were attempting to do. And meanwhile, over the last 2 weeks, I have had such eye-opening experiences that I can hardly grasp them. And they have involved a number of people trying to make me doubt my senses, trying to make me think I'm crazy. But the unfortunate thing is that all of them are, for them, in terms of their credibility, they're all saying the same things to me. There are these catchphrases and different things going on. When I tumbled to the fact that government and possibly satanic interests were showing an interest in me, and I can't go into exactly why that is. I prefer not to because that it compromises some things I'd rather not get into right now. But anyway, when I became aware of it, when I finally realized, when my denial broke, and I went, oh my God, this is actually happening. Then it was at that point that it explained everything to me. I had had a bad experience in India. A fellow had come to visit me. It turned out that he did very similar things to what every other incident that was directed at me had also done under the same guises. And then it started explaining all these other inexplicable things that had happened to me that I was attributing to supernatural, I was attributing to God, or I was attributing to my own instability. And I was going, well, none of this makes any sense. I don't get this. But then when I got it, it was like the last piece of the puzzle falling into place. You think you see the whole picture, but that one piece that falls in changes the entire dynamic of the picture, and you suddenly realize that what you thought you were looking at all along was not what you were looking at. You weren't even seeing it, and now suddenly you see it and go, oh my God. And then everything falls into place, and all the stuff that didn't make sense suddenly makes sense. And from that time on now, there's been this concerted effort to make me think I'm crazy. And there have been, any number of things occurring, people behaving completely out of character. People saying things to me they never said before. People behaving like they had never, as I say, out of character, never behaved before. And, this is going on an ongoing day-to-day basis now. But see, I'm hip to it now, and so as a result, it no longer has any kind of effect on me in terms of my believing it as anything other than what it most apparently has shown me that it is.
Do you think that you were mistakenly led to India, or was that something that...
Oh, that was set up.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that the guy who bought my ticket to take me there set me up. That I'm not saying, because he wanted to give me a gift to go there. But see, everything I do is watched. My emails have been compromised. My communications compromised for a long, long time. I was unaware of this, and so they know everything there is to know about me. So they knew I was going to India weeks before I went, and it was easy then to set it up. And the person who came to visit me there, that was a last-minute spur-of-this-moment thing. And in every case, wherever I went, they already knew ahead of time, so they were able to set things up. Who knows, point certain kind of energy beams at me, like in Mexico, and force certain kinds of behavior, which really made no sense. Excuse me. Any number of, they're already inside my life. For all I know, my room is mic'd and everything. But see, I'm not paranoid. I don't go around thinking that, I never thought it was that important anyway, but I don't go around thinking, oh, they're watching my every move. And even if I did, I'd be amused, you see. And so then I would act out for the camera, so to speak, you know.
Sure.
See, I just don't. You know, I'm not afraid. So I don't take any of this seriously because I know who I work for and I know who's most powerful. All the rest of this shit's smokescreen. You know, it's set up to try to, you know, make you doubt your own capacity, compromise your faith, and keep you from lacking the conviction and courage to live according to what you know is right, and therefore make you open to compromise or a certain shadowy behavior on your own part, compromising your own moral structure. You know, somebody places a lodestone around your moral compass, and who knows what happens.
Well, I followed you briefly while you were in India, and there were a number of people that were very concerned about you during that time.
Right.
And I was really leaning towards you weren't going to make it out of there alive. That's what it felt like to me. Did you ever get that sense?
Yes. Toward the end, and this is very strange, during the last 10 days, I thought, and I felt this overwhelming vibration of it too, like, oh, I'm not going to be allowed to leave here. So then all of a sudden, with no warning whatsoever, I went upstairs to these people upstairs who handle, they had an internet thing there, they bought and sold tickets and tours and all kinds of other things. And I went up to them, and I said, get me a ticket out of here, you know, by this date, and they shut right off and took care of it for me. So then I thought, okay, all right. So then, you know, I'm getting together to get out of there. I gave my jitney or rickshaw driver everything I paid for and bought there. Was a considerable amount of stuff. And I got it together to leave. And all kinds of bizarre things started happening from the airport in Chennai all the way to Frankfurt. And there were a number of occasions in these different places where I wasn't sure I was going to be able to continue. I was going to be allowed to keep going. All kinds of bizarre things were happening. And my credit card was suddenly canceled on me for no reason I could understand. So then I was trapped in one place. And at another point, I was in the Chennai airport. And there was a huge line there. And as is usually the case with me, I might start talking to myself when I do this, or to somebody next to me, and I started talking to somebody about 9/11, who did it, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And within a couple of minutes, this Indian guy comes out and he says, hey, would you come with me? And I had no idea what this meant. We bypassed all of the line. He took me right behind security, right through security without even being checked, and said, you can go to your gate now. That was so strange, you know. I had so many things like that happen. And I was in this bar in Frankfurt trying to get home, and I met somebody, and I was buying some drinks, and we had some conversations, and then my credit card got denied. But the guy who worked there said, and it was a considerable amount of money, he said, no problem. I'll cover it. I'll take care of it. Don't even worry about it. I'm going, what? And then I went to try to go and stay in a hotel there at the hotel, and I had my passport. And I knew my passport was good. I could say, here, I'll give you my passport. You can take my passport, give me a room, and, I will have the money sent. And so I go there up to the only hotel there in the airport that I knew of, and they didn't have a single room. And the woman was very rude to me, too, for no reason. I said, well, geez, I'm sorry, but what am I going to do? Then suddenly, like 15 feet away, I don't know how this guy was actually hearing these change. He goes, hey, I'll take care of it. And he says, you go wait over there. And I went and stood where he was pointing. He said, someone will be with you. And about 20 minutes later, this guy comes in. He's an Iranian. He manages this hotel about 8 miles away. And he picked me up. He took me over. He let me call home. The money got sent. He took care of me, blah, 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 blah. And then he gave me money to go and get home, but not enough, right? Because I had a bus booking. Mm-hmm. So I went to where the bus station was, but I went to the wrong train station. And it was freezing, and I had no jacket or anything because I hadn't even thought to take such a thing to India. It was quite warm. And I'm flipping out. I don't know what to do. And so I go over and I start telling the guys at the ticket place, these conductors, I'm saying, you know, and what am I going to do? She says, you come back in here, and you let me sit there in this heated place at this, you know, at a window where people were coming and looking for service. And they let me call, and I called this guy, and he took him half an hour to come and get me. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in this heated booth on this very comfortable chair, and people are coming up to the window asking me about bookings and information and everything else. And I kept having to point them to the other windows. It was so strange. I mean, none of this made any sense. And so then I went back and stayed with the guy again because I was at the wrong station to begin with, and that's not where my bus was leaving from. I was trying to capture my bus from a place where there was no bus station, which the Iranian guy hadn't thought of, and that's where he'd take me to. So I had to go back there again for yet another night and stay over. But then the next day I caught a train and I managed to get home. But I'm not even painting any idea of the sinister aspect of some of these things or the sense of a confusion and uncertainty that it was putting into me, especially after India, especially the condition I was in. And I got back and I think I wound up being prone for 2 or 3 days as I just struggled with getting my head back together and everything. And then finally I had it there, and it's been there pretty much since, with the exception of these really unusual events that keep happening that I can't figure out. Well, now they're just entertaining. They're no longer threatening, even though they may actually be more threatening than I thought they were.
Right. Well, the latter part sounds like divine providence to me.
I was looked after, no question.
Yeah. Frankfurt is a weird city, isn't it?
Oh, my God. I'll tell you, in a lot of ways, it's like Chicago. It's a brutal place. It's the place where all the money and finance and crap goes on in Germany. It is similar in a way to München or Munich, which is the place where all the a lot of the publishing. Frankfurt there is also the same thing. Lots of the publishing and the arts but also business. Lots and lots of business. So that's that area. It's an international area as well. And Frankfurt is their biggest international airport there in Germany, and that's where just the whole town. You could feel the cold vibe, man. You could feel the unfriendly. Nobody likes anybody vibration there.
It's true. I mean, obviously when I've traveled to Germany, you've got to pretty much leave out of Frankfurt to go back to the States. And even in some instances, some other countries, definitely Germany. And, I had spent some time in Cologne, a city which I really love.
Oh, yeah, Cologne, sure.
Yeah, and so I take the train, great train ride, and then, have to spend the night in Frankfurt and catch a plane the next day. And so a couple times I've walked around Frankfurt, and the chilly vibe that you describe is palpable. That place is just frigid.
It is, yes.
It's also one of the towns that was allotted to one of Meyer Amschel's sons. So Frankfurt is
that makes sense.
It's a Rothschild stronghold. Well, I know a lot of people are happy that you're back together again. Your molecules and your atoms are cooperating. Let's talk about your book.
None less happy than me.
The curious tale of Ash and the Whine. This is what I'm interested in. Not a day goes by, really, that you don't put something up on one of your blogs.
Right.
How did you find the time to write your blogs and also work on this book? I mean, there's a lot of heavy lifting going on here. How do you do that, and then how did this all come about?
Well, first of all, it doesn't take me nearly as long to write my blogs, probably, as most people think. I just sit down and type them right out. I don't really have to think about it. I mean, I can write them in as little as half an hour or an hour. Now, sometimes it might take a little longer because I stop and I go do something else, because a lot of the time, I'm multitasking. There are all kinds of things taking place, and I stop in the process of writing a blog entry to do any number of things. Check my email, check the dashboard for comments, because I like people to be able to see their comments come up as quickly as I'm in a position to do it. Or I have to go out and do something with the dogs, or I have to do any number of things. So that can cut into the time. But generally, the amount of time I spend actually doing any of that, I'm a pretty quick typer, and it just just runs right out. I mean, I don't have to sit around and think about any of it. Often enough, when I'm done, I have to read it again to see what I put there. And then I spend a little time correcting it, probably 10 minutes or so, and then, boom, I run it up. And so I've got plenty of the day left to do all kinds of other things.
And those other things are obviously writing a long-form work.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Who is Ash, and why is he important in some ways for the time that we're living in here?
Okay, well, Ash isn't actually human, but he thinks he is at first, and so does the reader, perhaps, but it's hard to say, but then the reader gets the idea that, he can't be human in doing the things that he does. Anyway, at some point, he meets, this is much later in the book, he finds out that, or someone else finds out concerning him, that he was a, what would you call it, homunculus sort of a thing, like the thing Paracelsus spoke about creating under a jar, a living form.
Mm-hmm.
Even a golem might be similar to that.
Right.
Something animated, by a force placed into it, and then would be directed according to the intent of a very high-level will,
mm-hmm.
magus, if you will. So anyway, this is what he is, and he's set in motion to bring punitive action upon all the slime balls that you and I are so most familiar with, the Israelis, the people at the head of the U.S. government, all kinds of people. And the majority of them all have very, very nasty tastes that involve violating children, torturing women, doing all kinds of terrible things. And Ash does a lot of punishment fits the crime stuff with them, and some of their demises are a little bit colorful. And meanwhile, of course, there's this one guy that he's after more than anyone else, and that's Schmelter. And he owns one of the biggest banks in America, and he's based on a particular individual. You can probably figure out who he is because he had a protege who was Secretary of State for a couple of terms in Washington and who was head of the NSA for a while. And these two together create a lot of mayhem, doing horrible things all over the place. And this guy's a pedophile and also a child killer. And he is in Ash's sights all through it. Meanwhile, there's this lady, Natalie. And Ash, she's on the radio and she speaks. And for some reason, her voice has this powerful impact upon Ash. He doesn't understand why or what it is. But then he's motivated to start keeping a diary. And then the next thing you know, he starts sending excerpts from the diary to this woman, Natalie, who's, on the radio and very successful. And, she's a writer as well as some other things. And this guy, Schmelter, well, she's writing an article about him. So that comes to his attention. He decides to take action on her. And she's already conversing with Ash and turning it over to the police. And there's two policemen. One's called Whine, and the other one is Max. And Max is a Hasidic Jew from a very unique group of people like the true Torah Jews. And so he is the person who comes along and tells all kinds of things about the Jews and the good Jews and the bad Jews and all of what they do. And there's a lot of humor in there because they have a captain, and he quotes Latin all the time, very funny Latin phrases that he introduces into every part of the conversation. So there's a lot of comedy and slapstick and stuff that goes on with those guys. And meanwhile, Whitey falls in love with Natalie, but Natalie's in love with Ash because Ash saves her ass, literally, from some very bad customers. And the next thing you know, she disappears. He's spirited her off and is hiding her somewhere. And it's rather complicated. There are many subplots taking place. But basically, it's about this Ash being a relentless force and how he starts cleaning up. He's like Mr. Apocalypse. And he's going around and he's cleaning up and he's putting the fear of God into the hearts of every one of these nasty shits. And the idea is that if he just gets a certain percentage of them, then the rest of them, well, they won't know whether he's around or not. And he leaves them plenty of messages saying, if you guys don't stop what you're doing, you're next, and this kind of a thing. And so it comes to a big climax where we start to find out what's going to happen to Ash. and who Ash really was in the first place. And Ash, dealing with rat smelter has this manservant called Loki, who's about 7 feet tall, weighs 300 pounds, and he's also he's a throwback and also a pedophile, but an ogre now as well. And he lives there with rat smelter and this other guy, Messenger. He's the former Secretary of State guy, and Ash comes up with an ingenious fate for them. And then at that point, Ash's job is done, so he goes back to see Natalie for the last bit of time that he has, and something magical takes place where Ash's fate is carried out. The dogs.
Uh-oh.
And I won't tell more because there are a lot of twists in there, and the result is Poncho.
Now, every time the dogs bark, you're like Pavlov there, thinking that something could be happening to you, huh?
Yeah, I should go out and look and see if there's a black SUV. No, this is actually who's showing up is Suzanne's uncle, and he walks one of the dogs.
Okay.
So he comes every day at this time.
So it sounds to me like it's kind of a spiritual Charlie Bronson kind of story.
Very much, yes. That's exactly what it is. It's a Mr. Majestic kind of thing, or there's a couple of other ones where actually more pertinent, where he goes around and gets death or die something.
Death Wish. Death Wish, yes.
Same title.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, it is in a way, and but really a lot of the book also has to do with Ash reflecting in his mind. You see him thinking and watch him becoming humanized, even though that's hard to believe given the stuff he does. But you see him going through all of these internal transitions, reflecting upon the meaning of existence. I try to use a novel format. The novel format's just incidental. I use it merely to set up certain constructs in order to get certain ideas across. And these come out in the mind and speech of the individuals that play their parts.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds to me like it could be pretty prime for Quentin Tarantino to take over and turn into a script, but I think Tarantino is on the other side of the fence currently.
The Inglourious Basterds thing, pretty much. That's where he's at.
Yeah. Hey, so I don't know if you caught this, but there was something that really strange that happened in Zurich about a week ago. And it was, they have one of the largest insurance companies in the world there, which is Zurich Insurance Group AG. And I don't know if you know this story, but there was a feud between the CEO and the CFO. And the CEO is this guy, Josef Ackerman, and very, very aggressive 21st century business model. And the CFO was this guy, Pierre Wauthier, who was much more rooted in sort of classic 20th century steady, slow growth economics. And this Ackerman was such an utter psychopath inside the headquarters of Zurich Insurance Group, AG, that last week the CFO committed suicide and typed up a suicide note blaming his demise solely and squarely on the head of Ackerman. Have you seen this?
No, that's totally missed my attention, yeah. I'll check it out, though, yeah.
And the only reason I bring this up is because I'm not necessarily sure that there's any foul play here. I don't think somebody took this guy out, typed up a note to get this Ackerman guy up, although you never know.
Yeah.
But this is one of the biggest companies in the world. It is probably one of the top 2 insurance companies in the world. And, we're talking, and their stock prices dropped by 30 francs just, over the course of the last couple of months, and really dropped precipitously on the news of this death. But what really struck me about this was that if indeed this was a straight deal, that we were talking about oversaturation in terms of people in this country saying, no more, we've had enough. it feels also to me like we're reaching this oversaturation point of psychopathology. And here's a guy that really just couldn't take it anymore. And I think it's a really fascinating and tragic look at somebody at a very high level who's been successful. I mean, this guy's he killed himself at his lake house, meaning he has other houses. And for whatever it was worth, it wasn't worth his well-being, his sanity, and his soul. So I'm just wondering if you have any commentary around the reaching the kind of the event horizon or the limitations of psychopathology and how people are starting to deal with it, either passive-aggressively, like taking their own lives, or in other ways.
Well, first of all, Ackerman was the bad guy, right?
That's right.
Okay. Well, then it stands to reason that the guy probably did just kill himself, because otherwise Ackerman's name wouldn't have come up. So let's move on then to something else, and that is this whole concept of psychopathology and the fact that there's also a much larger population too, but there are a lot more psychopaths running around these days than there ever were before. And part of that has to do with the depersonalization of society, where people have been bred from early on in their lives to be engaged in the pursuit of self-interest. And as we all know, a psychopath is someone for whom self-interest is preeminent. Nothing else really touches them. It's all they care about. Now, that all taken into consideration, and especially in light of your mention of the event horizon, well, we have to consider the essential mantra or motto that has to do with evil, and that is that evil destroys itself. It does indeed. And I have this character, you're probably familiar with him, called Mr. Apocalypse. I look at him as an actual living being, and he's moving around through the earth. He's got a stick, and he taps on everything, and every time he hits something, he exposes it. And he exposes it only to a limited degree, because this is, to wake people up who have the predisposition to wake up. But then, as people don't wake up, he starts to tap significantly harder, and he starts waking them up. And then past that point, he starts hammering on their heads until they wake up or else. And what happens along with that is that these psychopaths who are offing themselves or getting themselves into situations where they're often far more clever than to get themselves into, they are being forced by Mr. Apocalypse to act out in this fashion for the same reason that this insane Syrian thing is going on right now. It makes no sense, and it's lose-lose all the way around for the people trying to bring it off, simply because of what they're going to get hit with. They don't recognize, or seem not to, understand how much force there is against them, especially in terms of Israel. They don't seem to understand how well-armed Syria, Hezbollah, Iran, and especially Russia and China happen to be, and how it's in the interest of all those players there to all get together and to do their very best to make sure that this effort that is going on here does not succeed. So I can only determine from this that these idiots are being forced to act this way for the purpose of demonstration, so they can all be exposed, so they can all be bankrupted right in the public eye, and so they can all meet, their well-deserved fate as being, step-by-step guided, thinking they're in control, thinking they themselves are the initiator of their movement and the direction they're going in, because all these lies are being placed in their heads and they're being given the predisposition to believe these things, and they're just acting like crazy people, but to them it seems perfectly sane. Meanwhile, they are marching to doom. Mm-hmm. So that's my take on it.
Well, it's really fascinating about the Ackerman Wathier story is that Ackerman wasted no time, and he resigned from...
Oh, he did?
Oh, yeah. He wasted no time. And the response from the board at Zurich Insurance AG was that they, and this is where it gets kind of weird, they wanted him to reconsider because they didn't want to pass along a message to their investors or the marketplace that this was a shaky situation. So it had nothing to do with Ackerman coming to terms with his own soul, which I think maybe that is what might be happening. But it was more along the lines of, hey, hang in here and we'll get you some help, but really we need you because we need this facade, this front that we're still solid, we're still sturdy, you can still invest in us, you can still count on us. And it's the corporate mindset trying to come in and do an override on this guy who ultimately is being thrust back into his humanity based on the suicide of this Pierre Wauthier. It's a fascinating story, tragic, and it's right in your own backyard. I wanted to ask you, just going back earlier in our conversation, I wanted to ask you about what you said around people sharing the same kinds of language, the same kinds of words, almost reading the same script. This is interesting because when Dave Chappelle signed his big deal with the Comedy Network, he talked about something very similar. He talked about people that he knew and people that he trusted were all of a sudden, basically, responding to him in the same way, and all of them kind of uniformly saying the same things and trying to convince him that he was crazy. And it's fascinating. And I guess my question to you is, do you think that these people are part of a larger network, number one, or number two, that they are just empty vessels or shells of consciousness, which some people believe if you get into the whole soul or, drone or blank slate theory where, people are just walking around waiting to be occupied by the Matrix. And then they act out the role of the Matrix, just like the movie. So what do you think it is? Are they part of a network, or are they just kind of mindless drones that are being, for lack of a better term, possessed and put into action?
Well, quite easily, both of those things could be true.
Right.
They could definitely be part of an entire network, and I can assure you that they indeed are that. While at the same time, some percentage of them, and I don't know what percentage that is, are also drones. They're also individuals who have given up their own, what we call ordinary human values in the pursuit of self-interest, or their souls have been sucked out of them, or they've been programmed, or whatever the reasons may be, how they come to operate like they do. I am less concerned about this minutia than I am about the fact that it exists in the first place. And, my feeling, let me clarify a little bit. I'm familiar with Dave Chappelle. Are you familiar with the thing about him having to wear a dress?
Yeah, it was in one of his movies, a very early movie. He actually had to do something, and then he went on Oprah and he kind of outed, sort of the demasculization of the black male on Oprah, which was very interesting to watch. So, yes, I am.
Okay, exactly. So, they were trying to mold and craft him already at this point. And one of the ways that you do this, you put minders and hammers all around somebody, but you don't let them know that that's what they are. Miley Cyrus comes to mind here. All kinds of people come to mind who looked one way at one point and all of a sudden turned into the same kind of psycho slut, that all the rest of them turn into. The kind of Jennifer Lopez thing you see with her videos where she acts like a normal human being when she's on American Idol or she's somewhere else, but then, or acting in the movie, she's playing a role, but then you see her doing these music videos, and they're just utterly depraved. And my feeling is, one of the biggest motivators in existence is fear. And the other one, another control factor, is doubt and confusion. Okay? And when they are able to instill these things in you, then somebody else from another direction who doesn't even seem to be connected to whatever's going on can come along and guide you in a certain way where suddenly then it becomes clear and suddenly there's less fear. So you come to rely on the person who has done this. Then from another corner over here comes something else. Then from over here comes something else. And after a while, they've got you pinned, to particular individuals whose advice you always trust because situations have been set up. You wind up in them, then suddenly they help you out of every one of these situations. And from there on, they can dictate your behavior. And this is basically how I see this kind of thing. It doesn't work with some of us because we don't have any flesh in that game. I mean, we just don't play that way. We don't live in those ways, and fear doesn't operate on us. Doubt and confusion might a little bit, but inevitably, since we're tied to the divine, a lot of us, the divine is operating in our favor. So the divine has its own way of bringing to our attention the kind of BS, as was recently demonstrated to me a couple of weeks ago when I discovered and found out, that, hey, I was being played. And it took me so long to tumble to it because I was reading it all as, well, this is divine just putting me through it. Or this is this kind of inexplicable supernatural stuff that, I never do figure out, but it's all okay because I trust God, and God's looking out for me, and nobody can touch me anyway, unless God says so. And so, I was operating according to that, and in the meantime was completely unaware of what was actually taking place. Now, God allows these sort of things, probably so I can get hip to them more, possibly to demonstrate His power further down the line to those who are playing, with me.
I hopefully that would be a deep rationalization as to why this occurs, right? And a deep justification so that you can have a better handle on it and flip it back around the other way.
Absolutely. Well, I believe that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of people, this whole thing with the divine and the ineffable and how it affects your life. Well, it's different by degrees with each person. It really comes. See, some of us have much, much stronger faith than others. So for some people to believe a certain thing or to have the faith to continue or to withstand certain abuses, it's far, far greater than it might be for other people who are very easily dismayed. And that's the larger body of people, and they're the ones who run around and go, well, maybe so, maybe not, I don't know, this happened, that happened, blah, 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 blah. And they have now managed to explain to themselves that, that this is, the way it went. And until that construct is changed in their minds, well, they're easily going to be led around by the part of them they're still fearful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I have a friend here in Austin, and he knows somebody who's quite close to Johnny Depp. And he has shared with my friend that Johnny Depp is never alone, that there's always somebody around him. It's either it's either his kids and somebody watching the kids along with him, or it's management, or it's a group of hangers-on. But he's never alone, this guy. And I think that that's kind of how it works. There's a movie which was just brought to my attention, which I recommend everybody see, by the way. It's called Privilege. You can find it on, not The Privilege, but just Privilege. You can find it on YouTube. Viz, you would love this movie.
Yeah, I'll check it out as soon as I'm off here.
It was made in 1967. It's an English film, and it's really kind of a diary of an Illuminati rock star set in the future. That's the only way I can describe it. It's a pretty amazing film, and one of the things that you see in the film is that the character, the lead singer, his name is Steven. He's never alone. And anytime anybody gets close to him for some real human contact, even if it's just on the dance floor, eventually somebody will come along and put his arm around him and say, we need to go meet so-and-so. So these people who live in these, stratospheric environments of, being stars and having all the privilege that goes along with it, these people are slaves. And they have absolutely no freedom at all. And it's ironic that they're brought to our attention and glorified. And if you just dug a little beneath the surface, you would find that their existence is really shallow and tragic.
It's very true. Look at Marilyn Monroe. Sometimes it gets very tragic. Sure, well, and if they don't cooperate, look at Randy Quaid and any number of other people. And who knows how many of these people that have been locked down now in institutions. That girl, Amber, and I can't remember her last name, but anyway, a number of these different individuals, all this like weird stuff goes on around them. And people are just playing the game, they're living it up, enjoying the material excess that is theirs, they're hobnobbing on their A or B list level and going to the parties until they're left alone. Because unless they come outside the parameters, which, to tell you the truth, a lot of the attractions there make it so they don't even want to come out of the parameters, then they're fine. And they don't have, there's not that much attention that has to be paid unless they start to look like they're stray. Like, say, for instance, or if someone starts talking to them and they wonder who this person is, because no one else is allowed to have influence on these people except for the individuals who are, supposed to be controlling them.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we're going to just see, again, more and more of these masks beginning to fall by the wayside. I just don't think that the human race, for whatever or how many humans are left, can really continue to go on this path. I mean, I think people are going to crack, they're going to fall apart, they're going to commit suicide like this Wathier guy. They're going to want to just step out of the madness. And I think we're reaching that point. I think we're getting very close. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, once again, it comes back to the thing. Everything comes back to the concept of Mr. Apocalypse. Everything comes back to the awakening. Because I think the one dominant force taking place, the one dominant force is the awakening. This is the cosmic push that is now going to bring everybody to a state of a relative awareness about what's taking place. Now, then there's the appearance of those that are in power who are not in power. And that's like everything we see on our news, everything we pick up through the media, all the things we see through entertainment, all the things that are geared to mess up our existence through, once again, fear, doubt, and confusion,
right,
to send us mixed messages, to do all of the different things that keep us off balance. Because while we're off balance, we can be prodded in certain directions for balance seeking. And who knows? Maybe balance appears if you go in that direction. There's some semblance of balance, even though that's not balance because you're entirely the wrong place to begin with. So my take is that it doesn't really matter what these evil people are doing. It doesn't really matter how many people are stupid or asleep, or how many people are caught up in these possession passions, I call them, that deal with various sexual trips that are naturally dysfunctional and lead into greater and greater dysfunction, and eventually into bondage and torment, and there are various areas it goes into, and then sex is death finally at the end. And it doesn't matter all of these different things that are going on. It doesn't matter all the bogus religions and the way they've been perverted, even though they may once at a long ago time have been righteous and true. These things are all irrelevant except in terms of the people that don't wake up to it. And if they don't wake up to it, then at that point their karma really does intrude, and karma is a reality, although grace is very much around and people can avail themselves of it if they will seek it out. But the overriding reality to me is the awakening, is the power of the cosmos, which nothing can come against it. It is so much more powerful than every one of all the temporal forces put together that it's ridiculous. It's like saying, I have more power in my little finger than all the armies in the world.
Yeah.
If I were speaking for the cosmos. And given that, and here's another thing. All of the power that the cosmos manifests, or ever will manifest, is never as much as half of the power it possesses. There's always more reserved than is ever even expressed. That's how powerful it is. So one aligns himself with it, regardless of the tests you go through, regardless of certain amounts of suffering and certain amounts of trying and testing. You align yourself with it, and you take your licks however they may come, and you hope that you wake up more and more so you cooperate more and more and get fewer and fewer licks, because you're only getting licks in testing because you're still somewhat off the mark, or still not somewhat aware, or still not fully compassionate enough, or still not fully this or that, or whatever it is you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the end, to me, that's the reality.
So let's take a visionary leap here with you. Let's say we reach some form of critical mass, whether it's 33.3% or whatever that is, and we have touched into the tipping point of the awakening. What does that look like, number one? And number two, to the best of your ability, what does it look like on the other side of that? Because let's give people something to wrap their heads around in terms of how this might actually manifest and how it could be a really palpable experience for the rest of us.
Okay, it's a visionary leap, so I'm putting out my water wings. Okay, that's completely a personal affair, and that's going to stay a personal affair, even though it may collectively apply, given that people tend to like to operate in crowds, and they tend to operate in herds and things of that nature. But once it reaches the point, and we don't know that that point has already been reached, once it reaches that point, depending on the level that you're at, depending on your present level of awareness right there, my take is you're going to start experiencing quantum hyperdimensional leaps. All kinds of things are going to happen because the judgment will be coming down at that point. And when judgment comes down, that means good judgment as well as bad judgment. Usually when we say judgment and final judgment, that kind of thing, we're thinking, oh, shit, that's all bad. But the fact of the matter is judgment comes down in many, many different ways. And judgment comes down in very, very good ways. If you've been a good little boy, then Santa's going to come and have something in his bag for you. And that means a lot of blessings are going to start to be laid out for those people who have stayed relatively more or less right on, and those people that have hewed to the line according to what best can be expected of them, and in terms of, reaching whatever level might have been required of them. For the rest of the people, then it gets a little dicey, because once it starts to reach that mass, then you're dealing with a variety of whirlpools. Let's say you're dealing with whirlpools that are sucking down into the water, and you're dealing with whirlpools that are sucking up out of the water. And if you're dealing with whirlpools sucking up out of the water, well, that's a good thing, because you're getting sucked out of the water and into a higher and wider and clearer environment. If you're getting sucked down into the water, well, then that really depends on what your predisposition for evil, obsession, or whatever it might be, because you're going to be knocked right into it, because the appetites that exist now for a lot of people, well, the dial's just going to be turned up on that when they start being sucked down into the other thing, because I have this image I often like to present, which is that when you head into freedom, and I mean real freedom, not like I'm free, I can do whatever I like, blah, blah, blah. But when you're headed into real freedom, which means that you suspend things like intellectual rationalizations for all kinds of things, and when you stop doing all this thinking on your own, stop trying to figure it all out, because it's completely incomprehensible anyway, and just make yourself open to what is on its way to be shown to you, so that this is something you can learn, because this is where you can be useful, and this is something that's useful to you. In that case, you are moving into an environment that's more and more open, much less compressed. You're much, much freer. You're not banging into each other. It's cool. It's temperate. It's whatever is, I would say, whatever is the best. If you're going the other direction, it gets more and more compressed. It gets harder and tighter. You're more and more constricted and bound, and it gets hotter. And that's the definition of hell, is that you're getting to the point where the pressure is pushing more and more fixed into this situation, and it becomes combustible. And those are the fires of hell. And when you move in the other direction, there are different kinds of flames.
It's really funny how that happens, because we could have these periods where we are kind of floating in this bubble of grace, and to me, like, grace and freedom and humility are all part of the same package, right?
Absolutely.
And that, to me, that's the Trinity. If you operate in humility, you are rewarded with grace. And when you have grace, then there is a sense of freedom. There's a sense of freedom on an emotional level that anybody can emote from an authentic place. There's no cognitive dissonance. There's a sense of freedom, being able to share your mind in a clear way, thoughts in a clear way. There's a sense of freedom in terms of your relationships and your connections. Everything is lucid, and and sometimes these things get shaken up. And 2 days ago, I was flipping my plates here, and Texas, getting Texas plates from California plates. And I got to tell you, I had one of those hell days, man. It was really, I was dealing, it was like it was like a more sanitized version, an air-conditioned version of U-Turn by Oliver Stone. And the guy...
that was quite a film.
Yeah, totally. It's an amazing it's an amazing film in terms of, arrogance and pride and hubris and all that stuff, and what happens when it goes unchecked, and, you're in an environment with what you would think is a community of people that are lesser than who you are. It's quite a tale about humility. Anyway, I went through that trying to get these plates flipped over, and I'm not going to go into the sordid details, but it took the entire day for me to get this done, for me to make this transition from California to Texas, and it's 103 degrees. So the heat you're talking about wasn't just a spiritual heat. I mean, it was a physical heat. Man, I slogged through this thing all day, and it was just like, well, what did I need to learn, So, at the end of the day, I think for me it was becoming, even more trusting and self-aware about my own instincts, number one, and my assumption of authority. Just because somebody has a placard outside of their Autobot or their automobile shop that says they're an inspector doesn't mean you have to give them your full faith and credit. It's just a piece of paper that they managed to corral from the state by paying a fee and jumping through a few hoops. That's all it is. So for me, it was a test of dealing with even like the most remote and mundane level of authority that had absolutely zero authority in my life. And even giving my power over it to it in a way, just because in that moment they represented, the person that was going to sign a piece of paper and give me the okay or the blessing to be in this state. And it was a very strange experience, and I learned a lot from it, trust me on this. But I think we have these moments of fine-tuning, which can be slightly painful at the time, but, in the big picture, they're really fairly painless.
Well, see, that right there, you hit upon part of what it's all about. Now, see, it's what we recognize as authoritative. What do we give authority to?
Right.
When we see a military person, or we see a policeman, or we see a politician, or we see a school teacher, or our parents, or any of these relationships, we confer a certain level of power upon these individuals based on the credibility we invest in them. Now, then there's reverse credibility. They say the police have beaten you up a couple times. And so now that brings you around to where you hate all and every policeman. That's wrong too, okay? They are not all of them swine, even though a good percentage of them these days are acting like them. However, if you give authority to a higher hierarchy, which there indeed is one, and it's mirrored here by the lower hierarchy that we see in the temporal forces on Earth, and if you've actually made contact with this hierarchy, and if you start to develop relationships with the members of this hierarchy, who may test you out this way and that, or who may really just be looking to see how sincerely you want to stay in touch with them, and to which degree you will go to be absolutely certain that they exist, and continue to contact and reach out, even if there's absolutely no response for a considerable period of time. When you are that committed, that may be all it takes for a relationship. But if you're going in that direction, then all temporal authority no longer has any meaning whatsoever. You see a guy in a uniform? Okay, fine. You don't know who the guy in the uniform is. You just see the uniform. You might be able to predict or have some idea of how the person in the uniform will act. But it might surprise you, too. Because inside of every individual, along with the devil that you can invoke by acting a certain way around them or toward them, is also the angelic side. Because God is in every living entity. So you can invoke the God in people, too. And you can call that forth. And the next thing you know, these people are behaving totally out of character for them, especially even if they're really bad people, because you have only focused on this side of them. And I've had this happen. I mean, there were many times when I was on psychedelics. can I do? Where do you want to go? And at first, they were stopping me for a crime or some other kind of thing. But I just let the vibe creep all over and and next thing you know, they just had no idea who they were, what they were doing, or anything. And they just, wanted to help me any way they could. So, I know by personal experience that these things are real. And so, you have to look to invoke the deity aspect in people, and it will come forth. This is what gurus do.
Right.
They bring that out of you, and then you start to behave a certain way around them. You start to learn all kinds of things. All kinds of things happen. Well, fine, you're on that wavelength.
Right.
So now I don't always do this because I am an imperfect human being at this point still, but I try to do it as often as I can, and I have tremendous results with it too, I will say. And I'm convinced.
Well, before we send you off into the beautiful Swiss autumn day, can you give people an idea of what you mean by hierarchy?
Okay. Angels, spiritual masters, devas, which are basically angels, high beings, high souls, entities from the devic realm who may themselves be, consciousness-wise, much higher than human beings, who are all spinning around, certain nature spirits, Lady Nature herself, the pantheon of deities as they rise up from one light to the greater light to the greater light. For instance, all life on Earth comes from the sun. That's it. And all the avatars that come down here are sun gods. They really are. So, logically, the sun is at the chief position on a certain level, but not entirely so. At the chief position is in the hierarchy. But then, say Lord Vivasvan is the present regent of the sun, but Lord Krishna is much higher than he is. So he is just a servant of Lord Krishna. But if you're serving him, you're serving Lord Krishna. Now, to try to describe how this all sorts itself out, I'm not sure myself. See, I only have the relationships I have with specific deities and specific entities with whom I communicate. And I don't even concern myself with any of the rest. If I'm meant to meet any of them or they have an interest in me, then that'll be arranged without anybody even asking me in the first place. So.
Okay. Well, I think that clarifies it somewhat. I guess what you're saying is for people to get in touch with their own hierarchy, for lack of a better term. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, see, you phrased the question in a certain way. Actually, what you were asking was, how can I explain that in terms that are beneficial to the people listening?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a different thing. Okay. Well, now, bring it back to one of the rules, inflexible, invariable rules of existence. You are always better at the things you love than you are at the things that you don't love doing.
That's true.
And anything that you love, you will keep doing, and you will keep getting better at. Why? Because you love it. Apply that same rule to the members of the hierarchy. Just ask yourself within, what really attracts me? Which of these entities, which of these deities really speaks to me? And go for it. Go to that because you got an attraction there. And to tell you the truth, if you're not supposed to be communicating with that particular one, they will pass you off to where you belong. See, You only have to make a connection at any particular point, and after that, introductions are made. You're moved up the line. Who you're supposed to see, you'll see. Do it like that.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Let's tell people where they can find your book. If they want to download it, where can they get that? Your website, obviously. Any other places?
Well, actually, at this point, because the print edition is not yet available, but hopefully will be next week. At that point, of course, it'll be available off the website, and there will be links on the blogs and all of that sort of thing.
Okay.
There'll even be advertisements on a lot of the websites that they all visit. However, until that time, they email me at lessvisible@gmail.com.
Okay.
Or they just simply take lessvisible@gmail.com and they go to PayPal and they have 10 euros into me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I will get it out to them. Until that time. Actually, you know what? As a special for the radio show here, we'll make it just €7 and feedback.
Oh, there you go, €7 and a feedback. And this is not a 50, 60, 70 page kind of smash words quickie. This is over 300 pages of dynamic spiritual payback. And I guess you would be kind of like the Buddhist version of the Tibetan Buddhist version of Elroy Leonard with this thing. So.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, I can kind of sense that. So.
Yeah, well, I like that guy's work.
Well, listen, Viz, it's always great when you stop by, and I think you and I could probably talk for 3 or 4 hours, but
no question.
Unfortunately, I do have limitations with the old blog talk thing, but let's have you back on again sometime, especially if things start to get hot and heavy, and a good dialogue between the two of us might actually be something of use for people. So let's just stay in touch and do this again sometime.
Let me interject here. I'm always available to you. So
okay.
You simply let me know, and we'll work it out at your earliest convenience.
Okay.
I promise.
All right, let's give people the blogs too if they're listening for the first time. There's Smoking Mirrors and bust out the litany of your other sites.
Okay. Reflections in a Petri Dish that deals with cultural stuff. Smoking Mirrors is a socio-political blog. Visible Origami deals with metaphysics. Used to have Profiles in Evil. I stopped doing that. The other blogs are more personalized, and they can find those blogs through the fold-down menu in any of the blogs already mentioned. And there's also the radio show blog, and that usually you can visit Monday morning because then there's always a new radio show up most of the time. Right.
Very good. All right, Viz. It's always a blessing. You take care of yourself and keep a check on the psychopaths in your vicinity.
Yeah. Okay. Not a problem.
Right.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for inviting me. It's always just really great to visit with you. We have a simpatico on that.
I agree. That's our friend all the way from Europe, Mr. Less Visible.
Okay.
And so it was. That was our interview from yesterday. It's always interesting for me to go back and listen to things that I've done. I don't often do that, so I critique myself as I'm listening. I heard some stuff I need to clean up as a result of that interview. Hey, it's Virgo. What can I say? We have 2 minutes left in the show. See, is one of them. I've got to stop the We have 2 minutes left in the show, so what I'd like to do is just say thanks to everybody that's listened in the chat room. Big chat presence today. 40 people in the chat room. Before the show, I did a coaching session for one of the listeners, and he told me how much that he enjoyed listening to the show. And one of the things that came to me while I was talking to him and he was sharing that comment was the big payoff for me with the show is you and all the people that listen to the show and are in the chat room or participate on Facebook or read the blog. Doing the show has opened me up to people in a way that I would never have experienced had I not done this. And a whole new community and a ton of support and connection in a way that I never envisioned. So in as much as you might enjoy this, I also enjoy you as well. I want to thank you all for being a part of it every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and perhaps even more to come. So with that said, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open what's possible. I'll see you guys on Monday, and hopefully we'll be at a place where we're not at war yet, but if we are, we'll be able to talk about it and break it down. Say a prayer. Peace in the Middle East. God bless. I'll see y'all on Monday.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu. perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words, I submit that these impressions are valid and significant. And I will even say this, such an impression is a clue that at some past time point, a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this, an alternative world branched off.